Last year, on Ash Wednesday of 2020, the United Church of Christ published the Environmental Justice Report, Breath to the People, Sacred Air and Toxic Air Pollution. It focused on toxic air pollution from 100 super polluters and the surrounding communities whose members suffered threats to their health as a result. Because of the pandemic, the report proved to be relevant in ways never anticipated. Members of communities that suffer from toxic air pollution are especially susceptible to a virus that attacks weakened respiratory systems. The effects of residential segregation within the US, which sees the concentration of people of color in disempowered neighborhoods, exposed to toxins that puts them at a higher chance of impaired heart and lung function, leaving them highly vulnerable to COVID-19. Similarly, communities in East Africa find themselves affected by hunger and malnutrition, due in part to COVID-19 restrictions, crop failures from flooding, and locusts made worse by climate change. We all live together on one earth, which we share, which God created for us and bequeathed to us. We read in Genesis that God created plants, animals, and humankind to dwell on this earth and found it all very good. Too often human actions create toxic or barren valleys, pastures, oceans, mountains, and communities out of the land of beauty and fertility that God created to be our home. In Genesis 1, we also read that God gave humankind dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. But the inclusive Bible translates this word for dominion quite differently. Notice the differences in the bolded text on the left side of the screen, the New Revised Standard Version, and the right side of the screen, the Inclusive Bible Translation. In Genesis 1:26 of the Inclusive Bible, humans are given stewardship, not dominion, over the creatures of the earth. In a similar vein, in verse 28, God's people are to be responsible for the earth and to watch over every living thing. Imagine what kind of shape our planet would be in with this understanding of humans' role in the world. In the late Bronze Age, when scholars believe Genesis first appeared in written form, any given person's knowledge of the earth and its inhabitants would have been severely limited. The world was a frightening and dangerous place, and it's easy to imagine feeling the need to control your environment in order to survive. Even more so when God's words in the book of Genesis existed only as an oral tradition. 6,000 years later, we are only beginning to understand that our stewardship, our responsibility, extends even beyond the living plants and animals of the earth to the systems that enable them to live and thrive. Our air, water, land, and sources of energy are all shared resources, not only shared by human beings, but by all of creation, all of the living things of the earth, which need them to eat, to breathe, to survive. It wasn't until the 20th century that scientists first began to understand that carbon emissions might have a warming effect on the Earth's atmosphere. Before God, the true owner of nature and all creations, human beings must confess that human exploitation and abuse of these resources, in ignorance or willful disregard of the consequences, has caused degradation of all those resources, air, water, land, and energy sources, and has created the potential for human-made catastrophe of a magnitude that could make our Earth, God's beautiful creation, uninhabitable. All of us have heard and seen stories about human-made disasters that our collective disregard for the health of our planet has produced in the 21st century alone. The commodities company Trafigura dumped 540 plus liters of toxic waste at 18 sites off the Ivory Coast in 2016. The multinational commodities company has never disclosed exactly what was in that 540 plus liters of toxic waste. Following the dumping of those materials, more than 100,000 people sought medical attention for a range of symptoms, including dizziness, vomiting, and breathing problems, and authorities reported 15 deaths. Even before the catastrophic Deepwater Horizon explosion and gas spill in 2010, an area in the Gulf of Mexico, ranging from 5 to 8,000 miles wide, has been a wildlife dead zone for many months of the year. Runoff from the Mississippi River deposits massive amounts of pesticides, fertilizers, and animal waste, which renders the water so low in oxygen that during the summer, the area is devoid of wildlife except for the bodies of shrimp, crabs, and other marine life which have perished. Air pollution is now the fourth leading cause of death in China, after cancer, heart disease, and stroke. And air pollution is also a significant factor contributing to the development of many cancers. The total tropical rainforest loss since 2002 is 60 million hectares, an area larger than the combined landmass of California and Missouri. Average annual primary forest loss from 2015 to 2019 was nearly 50% higher than in the 5-year period from 2010 to 2014. But even in the dark valley of environmental degradation, God does not abandon us to our own selfish devices. As the green blade rises, as new growth bursts forth from dormant seeds, efforts to stop and reverse the tide of environmental destruction of our shared God-given home are springing up all over the world. First and foremost, our country is back on the right track towards addressing climate disruption. The New York Times reports, in a show of renewed resolve after 4 years of unvarnished climate denial, Mr. Biden formally pledged that the United States would cut its emissions at least in half from 2005 levels by 2030. His administration also announced it intends to double by 2024 the amount of money it offers to help developing countries compared with what the United States spent annually in the second half of the Obama administration. At Thursday's International Earth Day Summit, President Xi Jinping of China said his country would strictly limit increasing coal consumption in the next 5 years and phase it down in the following 5 years. While President Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil pledged to eliminate illegal deforestation by 2030. These are bold promises. If they are kept, they will go a long way towards mitigating air pollution in China and decimation of rainforests in South America. One of Australia's largest environmental restoration organizations, Greening Australia, is planting 25 million trees for Australia's bushfire recovery with support from corporations and nonprofits. Last year, the European Union took ambitious steps to address the more than 12 million tons of electric waste the bloc produces annually, acknowledging that Europe is living well beyond its planetary boundaries. A European Parliament vote called for mandatory repairability of scores of consumer electronics, among a host of other initiatives intended to extend products' lifespans. Several European nations have already taken action. The UK agreed to enforce EU repair rules. France launched a repairability index for select electronics, and Austria reduced taxes on small repairs. These efforts are a result of the right to repair movement, an activist-led fight to give consumers the legally protected freedom to fix the products they own. This is just a small sample of the many activities being undertaken around the world to preserve and restore the earth and all that lives on it. The people of this faith community have historically been deeply concerned about environmental issues. From participating in Fidalgo Bay Day to reducing reliance on non-reusable plastics, thank all of you for everything you do to care for the earth every day. It's becoming more and more apparent that sustainability is not an option that we can accept or reject. It's necessary for our survival. For us, as followers of the way, it's not just a matter of survival, but a matter of faith. In its report, Earth Day Sunday 2021, Health, Racism, and Ecological Justice, Creation Justice Ministries reminds us that we are called to live our lives in consideration of our hope for a new world where righteousness is at home. With this hope, we rise above cynicism and refuse to conform to the dominant patterns of injustice and disregard for people and planet. God goes with us when we seek to heal our earth, liberate those who are oppressed, and bring wellness and balance to our world. We are Easter people, people who celebrate rebirth, renewal, and resurrection in our hearts and in our lives. Our faith calls us to cultivate our connections and relationships with each other, to serve the common good and not our own selfish purposes. May we respond with faithful stewardship of the earth and all its creatures in gratitude for God's magnificent creation. Amen.